Tonight does not ask anything from you. You are not here to settle the mind, and you are not here to improve the night. There is nothing you need to achieve before resting, and nothing you need to release before sleep can arrive. This moment is already enough to begin, even if it feels unfinished, even if it feels unclear, even if part of you is still awake and watching. You may notice the habit of checking in on yourself, the quiet impulse to ask whether this is working, whether you are doing it correctly, whether rest is coming fast enough. There is no need to answer those questions tonight. They can remain unanswered, and the night will continue without them. Breathing happens whether you pay attention to it or not. The body settles in its own timing, adjusting weight, warmth, and tension without instruction. You do not need to guide it. You do not need to stay with it. You can let it move on its own, the same way the night moves forward without asking permission. There is nothing to prepare. You do not need to clear your thoughts, and you do not need to hold on to them either. Thoughts can come and go in the background without being followed, without being measured, without being asked to make sense. They are allowed to pass through the same way distant sounds pass through the air outside, noticed briefly, then replaced by silence. If there is a feeling of tiredness, it does not need to be explained. If there is restlessness, it does not need to be solved. Even the wish to sleep can soften and step aside. The night does not require effort from you in order to hold you. You can allow yourself to arrive without intention, not arriving somewhere new, but arriving where you already are, here where nothing needs to be fixed, here where nothing needs to be tracked or counted, here where the night continues, steady and patient, whether you are paying attention or not. And as the voice continues, you do not need to follow every word. You can let meaning fade in and out, like light behind closed eyes. You can listen loosely or not at all. The sound will remain, carrying the rhythm for you, allowing you to rest without holding on. There is a quiet habit the mind carries, even into the night, a habit of counting what was done today, what was left undone, how much energy remains, how much was already spent. It happens so softly that you may not even notice it at first, this gentle measuring, this invisible scale moving back and forth, trying to decide whether today was enough. You do not need to stop that habit. You do not need to push it away or replace it with something calmer. Tonight, it can simply lose its purpose, not because it was wrong, but because there is nothing left that needs to be measured. The day does not need to be evaluated before it ends. It does not need a summary, and it does not need a conclusion. Moments that felt heavy, moments that felt empty, moments that passed without leaving a clear mark can all remain exactly as they are, without being added up, without being compared, without being assigned a value. The body already understands this. It does not count how many breaths are left before rest arrives. It does not check whether relaxation is happening fast enough. It simply shifts, settles, and continues, responding to the quiet gravity of the night without analysis. You may notice the mind reaching for numbers that are not really numbers. How far you've come, how far you still need to go, whether today moved you forward or held you back. Those measurements can soften now, not by disappearing, but by becoming unnecessary, like tools set down after their work is finished. Nothing about this moment needs to be recorded. You are not behind and you are not ahead. You are not accumulating rest and you are not running out of it. The night is not keeping score and neither does the body. As the need to count begins to loosen, there may be a sense of space opening, subtle and unforced, not an empty space that asks to be filled, but a quiet one that does not demand attention, a space where time feels less precise, where effort fades into the background, where the idea of measuring gently loses its meaning. You do not have to stay with this feeling. You do not have to notice it clearly. It can remain vague, almost unrecognizable, working on its own while you rest. The voice can continue and the night can deepen without anything being tracked, without anything being checked, without anything needing to add up. Even now, there is no need to check how this is going. You do not need to notice whether the mind is quieter than before or whether the body feels heavier than it did a moment ago. Those small checks are part of the same measuring habit, and they too can be allowed to rest. The night does not move in steps that can be counted. It does not advance in clear stages, and it does not wait for you to catch up. It unfolds slowly, continuously, without marking progress, without signaling milestones, without asking you to confirm anything along the way. If the mind drifts toward memory, it does not need to sort those memories. If it drifts toward tomorrow, it does not need to prepare. There is no advantage in knowing where attention is going next. It can wander, pause, and dissolve in its own rhythm, free from the quiet pressure to make sense. The sense of time may begin to blur, not suddenly, but gently. Minutes no longer feel distinct, and the difference between earlier and later becomes less important. The body does not need to know how long it has been resting. It only responds to the gradual softening that comes when nothing is being monitored. You might sense a lightness that does not come from effort, a kind of ease that appears when counting falls away. Not because something was removed, but because something stopped insisting on being measured. The space left behind does not ask to be filled. It remains open, steady, and quiet, carrying you without demand. And as the voice continues, it can become just another sound moving through that space. Words do not need to be remembered. Sentences do not need to be completed. The night holds the rhythm now, allowing you to rest without keeping track of where you are or how far you've gone. Comparison often arrives quietly, not as a sharp thought, but as a background feeling, a subtle awareness of others, of earlier moments, of imagined versions of yourself moving along different paths. Even at night, when the world grows still, that sense of distance can linger, measuring where you are in relation to something else, something unseen. There is no need to push that feeling away. Tonight, it does not have to disappear. It can simply begin to lose its weight, the way a sound loses clarity as it moves farther into the distance. Still present, but no longer asking for attention. The mind is used to orienting itself through comparison, before and after, closer and farther, better and worse. But in the quiet of the night, those reference points start to soften. Without effort, without decision, they begin to blur, as if the lines separating one position from another are gently dissolving. You are not required to know where you stand right now. There is no need to locate yourself on a scale or to check your position against anyone else's movement. The night does not recognize rankings. It does not divide experience into progress and delay. It simply holds what is present without asking how it compares. The body understands this instinctively. It does not compare this breath to the last one. It does not judge whether rest is deeper now than it was moments ago. It responds only to what is happening, adjusting in small, quiet ways that do not need to be named or noticed. As comparison begins to loosen, there may be a sense of relief that feels almost unfamiliar. Not the relief of reaching a better place, but the relief of no longer needing to know where you are at all. A gentle neutrality where experience is allowed to exist without being weighed against another version of itself. Thoughts may still appear, carrying images of other people, other times, other possibilities. They do not need to be sorted or corrected. Without comparison, they lose their edge. They pass through more lightly, no longer asking you to measure yourself against them, no longer insisting on meaning. In this space, the idea of being ahead or behind begins to feel less relevant, not because it has been answered, but because the question itself is no longer necessary. The night offers a place where nothing needs to be proven, where presence is enough, without reference, without contrast. You do not need to hold on to this feeling. You do not need to recognize it clearly. It can remain subtle, working quietly in the background as the voice continues. Comparison does not have to end completely. It only needs to soften enough to let rest arrive without resistance. Even the idea of improvement can begin to feel distant here, not because improvement is wrong, but because there is nothing in this moment that requires adjustment. The night does not ask you to become a better version of yourself before it allows rest. It does not compare who you are now with who you were earlier or who you imagine you should be. Without comparison, experience no longer needs a mirror. It does not have to reflect itself against another life, another pace, another outcome. It can exist on its own, simple and unmarked, like a sound heard once and then allowed to fade without repetition. The sense of watching yourself can soften as well. There is less need to observe how you are doing, how you are feeling, how close you are to rest. That observer, so useful during the day, can step back now, leaving more space for the body to settle without commentary. If attention drifts outward, it does not have to return. If it drifts inward, it does not need to stay. There is no correct direction and no advantage in choosing one over another. The night holds all of it evenly, without preference. You may notice moments where nothing is being compared at all. They may be brief, almost unnoticeable, like gaps between thoughts. Those gaps do not need to be extended or protected. They can appear and disappear naturally, leaving behind a quiet sense of ease. As comparison continues to lose its meaning, rest no longer feels like a destination. It becomes something that unfolds on its own, without being measured against expectation. The voice can move through this space gently, without guiding, without evaluating, allowing you to remain exactly where you are, without reference, without contrast. There is a familiar movement that often appears before rest, a quiet scanning of the self, looking for what could be adjusted, softened, corrected. Even in stillness, the mind can reach for improvement, as if rest must be earned by becoming slightly better than before. Tonight, that movement does not need to complete itself, not because it is wrong, but because there is nothing here that requires repair. The night does not ask you to arrive in a finished state. It does not wait for you to become calmer, clearer, or more settled before it allows you to rest. The idea of improvement belongs to time. It depends on before and after, on progress and direction. But the night loosens time's grip. Moments begin to overlap and the urgency to change fades into the background, where it no longer needs to guide you. The body does not improve itself in order to sleep. It simply responds to gravity, to warmth, to the slow quieting that comes when effort is no longer required. Muscles release without instruction. Breath deepens without a plan. There is no version of the body that needs to be reached before this can happen. Thoughts may still arise, carrying ideas of how things could be different. They do not need to be argued with. They can remain incomplete, gently drifting without being finished, without being turned into action. Here they lose their urgency, their need to become something useful. There is relief in not needing to improve, even if it is subtle at first. Not the relief of giving up, but the relief of recognizing that nothing is missing. This moment does not lack anything that must be added. It does not contain a flaw that needs attention. It is already allowed to exist as it is. You may notice how quiet the sense of effort becomes when improvement steps aside. There is less pressure to manage the experience, less need to shape what comes next. Rest no longer feels like a result to achieve, but like a natural state that returns when nothing interferes. You do not need to hold on to this realization. You do not need to remember it clearly. It can remain in the background, working without language as the voice continues and the night deepens. Nothing needs to be improved for rest to arrive. Nothing needs to change for this moment to be enough. Even the idea of resting well does not need to be perfected. You do not have to sleep deeply, quickly, or completely for this moment to be allowed. There is no standard you need to meet, no outcome you need to reach in order to belong to the night. Rest can arrive unevenly, slowly, or in fragments, and it is still rest. The urge to adjust yourself may appear again, quietly checking posture, breath, attention. That urge does not need to be resisted. It can soften on its own, losing interest as there is nothing left to correct. The body already knows how to settle when it is not being guided. You might notice how effort fades not all at once, but in layers. First the effort to think clearly, then the effort to feel calm, then even the effort to let go. Each layer loosens in its own time, without instruction, without being asked. In this space, nothing is expected of you. You are not required to participate in the process. The night continues whether you are involved or not, carrying breath, sensation, and awareness gently forward without asking you to improve the experience. Thoughts can slow, not because they are being controlled, but because they no longer have a task. Without a problem to solve, they drift more freely, touching lightly and then moving on. They do not need to arrive at insight or resolution. They are allowed to remain unfinished. As the sense of improvement dissolves further, there may be a quiet steadiness underneath, not excitement, not relief, just a simple stability that does not ask to be named. It does not need to be recognized in order to work. It can hold you quietly as the voice continues and the night deepens. Nothing needs to be improved. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken away. Rest does not wait for a better version of this moment. It is already here, arriving naturally as soon as effort steps aside. There is a moment when rest no longer feels like something you are doing. The effort to relax, the intention to let go, even the sense of choosing to rest can begin to fade. What remains is quieter, less defined, as if the body and the night have taken over without asking. You may notice how holding on has many subtle forms. Holding the breath just a little, holding attention in place, holding the idea that you should stay present or that you should drift away. None of these need to be corrected. They can loosen gradually, releasing themselves when there is nothing left that needs to be held together. The night does not require you to surrender anything. It does not ask you to place trust somewhere specific. Even the act of letting go can step aside. Rest deepens when there is no one left trying to rest. The body understands how to be supported without being held. It settles into weight and surface, allowing contact to do the work. Muscles soften, not because they are told to, but because there is no reason for them to stay engaged. Breath moves without guidance, quiet and steady, carrying itself forward. Thoughts may continue to pass through, but they no longer need to be carried. They do not need to be followed or released. They can arrive, fade, and disappear on their own, leaving no trace that requires attention. Nothing needs to be kept in mind. As the sense of holding dissolves, awareness becomes less focused. Edges blur. The difference between listening and resting becomes less clear. The voice can drift closer or farther away without changing anything essential. Here, rest is not something you receive. It is not something you allow. It simply remains when effort is absent. When nothing is being held, nothing needs to fall away. You do not need to notice when this happens. You do not need to stay with it. The night carries this process quietly, continuing whether you are aware of it or not, allowing you to be supported without being held, resting without effort, exactly as you are. Even the sense of being supported does not need to be named. You do not have to feel held in order to rest, and you do not have to notice the surface beneath you responding. The body adjusts in small, quiet ways, distributing weight, releasing pressure, finding balance without announcing what it is doing. There can be moments where attention fades without direction, not moving inward or outward, not focusing or drifting, simply becoming less involved. In those moments, the idea of a center begins to blur. There is no clear place where effort begins or ends, no single point that needs to stay awake. The night does not require participation. It does not need you to cooperate with it or follow along. Rest happens whether you are aware of it or not, continuing steadily, without feedback, without confirmation. Breath continues to move, not as something you are doing, but as something that is happening. The pause between breaths lengthens naturally. The body responds to those pauses, softening further, sinking slightly more with each cycle without needing to be guided. You may notice that even the sense of you becomes less defined, not disappearing, not dissolving completely, but becoming less solid, less central. Awareness spreads out, no longer gathered around a single point, allowing the night to carry what remains. Thoughts can appear as fragments, incomplete and unimportant. They do not need to form a line. They do not need to lead anywhere. They pass through like distant lights, briefly visible, then gone, without requiring recognition. Here, rest is not an action and not a reward. It is what remains when nothing is being held in place. When there is no one left to manage the experience, the night supports you naturally, steadily, without effort, allowing you to be carried without being held. There is no need to remain aware of this state. Even awareness itself can soften, becoming less precise, less concerned with what is happening next. You do not need to stay present, and you do not need to drift away. Either can happen on its own without instruction. The night holds space without defining it. It does not tighten around you, and it does not let you fall. It remains steady, allowing the body to rest in a way that does not require effort or attention. Support is already there, whether it is felt or not. You may sense small waves of relaxation passing through, not all at once, but slowly, unevenly. A subtle release in the shoulders, a gentle heaviness in the limbs, a quiet settling that does not need to be noticed in order to continue. Each wave moves through and then dissolves, leaving behind a deeper stillness. There is nothing you need to keep in place, no posture to maintain, no breath to regulate, no state to protect. Everything that needs to happen is already happening, carried forward by the night itself. As the voice continues, it can fade further into the background. Words become less important than the space between them. Sound becomes texture rather than meaning, allowing you to rest without holding on to language, without following direction, without effort. Rest does not require being held. It does not require awareness. It remains quietly present, supporting you naturally as the night deepens and everything else becomes unnecessary. There is a quiet relief in realizing that the world does not need your attention in order to continue. Even now, while you rest, things are unfolding without your involvement. The night moves forward on its own, carrying time, sound, and space gently along without asking you to participate. You do not need to witness this movement. You do not need to stay aware of it or understand it. The world has always known how to continue without being observed, and tonight it does so again, steadily and without effort. Breath continues without direction. The body shifts subtly, responding to comfort and gravity in ways that do not require thought. Outside this room, distances change, lights dim and brighten, air cools and warms, all without needing your attention. Nothing pauses when you rest. There is no responsibility in this moment, no task waiting for confirmation, no outcome depending on whether you are present or not. The world does not ask you to hold it together. It does not ask you to keep track of what is happening next. You may notice how unfamiliar this feels at first. The sense that things can go on without you noticing, without you managing, without you being involved at all. And yet, this has always been the case. The world has carried itself through countless nights, quietly and reliably, without interruption. Thoughts may still appear, suggesting things that need attention, moments that need to be remembered, futures that need to be prepared. They do not need to be followed. They can drift through and dissolve, leaving the steady movement of the night untouched. There is a softness that comes with stepping out of the way, not stepping away from life, but stepping out of the center of it, allowing the world to continue in the background, without supervision, without effort, without commentary. Time becomes less personal here. Minutes pass without being counted. The distinction between now and later grows thin. The night does not hurry, and it does not wait. It moves at its own pace, carrying everything evenly. You do not need to go anywhere with this feeling. You do not need to stay awake to experience it fully. It can remain vague, almost unnoticed, working quietly as the voice continues and the night deepens. The world continues on its own, and you are free to rest within it without holding, without effort, without involvement. Even without your attention, the rhythm of the night remains steady. Sounds rise and fade at a distance. Air shifts quietly. Light changes almost imperceptibly. None of this asks to be noticed in order to continue. You are not required to keep the world in mind. You are not responsible for remembering it while you rest. Everything that needs to move will move on its own, following patterns that do not depend on your awareness. The body is part of this same movement. Breath flows as the night flows, without direction, without effort. Small adjustments happen naturally, the body responding to comfort and stillness in its own language, without explanation. There can be moments when attention loosens so much that it feels almost absent. Not lost, not gone, simply no longer involved. In those moments, the boundary between you and the world grows thinner. There is less separation, less sense of being the one who notices. Nothing needs to be held in place. No thought needs to be completed. No sensation needs to be understood. The night carries all of it gently, allowing experience to continue without management. The sense of time may stretch and soften. Minutes drift without being marked. The difference between earlier and later becomes less relevant. The world does not measure its movement, and neither does the body. You may feel a quiet permission to step fully out of the way, to let the world move as it always has, without your involvement. This is not withdrawal and not absence. It is simply rest, happening within a larger flow that does not need your help. As the voice continues, it can blend into that flow. Words lose their edges. Meaning fades into rhythm. The night carries everything forward, steadily and quietly, allowing you to rest while the world continues on its own. There is nothing you need to stay connected to right now. The world does not require your attention as proof that it exists. It continues whether you are watching or not, steady and reliable, carrying its own momentum through the night. You may notice how natural it feels to let this happen. Not as a decision, but as a quiet permission that does not need to be repeated. The sense of responsibility loosens further, and with it, the need to stay aware of what comes next. Even the idea of participation can soften. You do not have to be part of the process for it to continue. The night unfolds without coordination, without direction, without asking for confirmation. Breath and sound move together, unplanned and unmeasured. The body remains supported, adjusting gently, sinking slightly more as effort fades. Nothing needs to be checked, nothing needs to be acknowledged. As the world carries itself forward, rest becomes simpler. Not something added, not something earned, just something that remains when there is nothing left to do. The night deepens on its own, and you are free to follow it or not follow it at all, resting quietly as everything else continues without you. There is a place the mind returns to when measuring finally loses its hold, not a location, not a state to recognize, but a quiet absence of reference. Here, nothing is counted and nothing is checked against anything else. Experience unfolds without needing a frame. You may notice how unfamiliar this feels at first. Without markers, without progress, without comparison, attention has nothing to lean on. It does not need to decide where it is or how long it has been here. Time softens, becoming less defined, less personal. In this space, even the idea of rest changes. It is no longer something that happens after effort. It is simply what remains when nothing is being measured. The body responds naturally, sinking into this simplicity without instruction. Breath moves without rhythm being tracked. The space between breaths lengthens and shortens on its own. There is no need to notice when this happens. It continues whether you are aware of it or not. Thoughts may still pass through, but they no longer organize themselves into meaning. They arrive as fragments, impressions, half-formed images that do not ask to be completed. Without measurement, they lose their direction. They drift, pause, and fade without leaving a trace that needs attention. You do not need to stay awake to remain here. You do not need to understand what is happening. This space does not depend on clarity. It does not disappear when attention softens. As the voice continues, it can become part of this measured free space. Words blend into sound. Sound blends into silence. The distinction between listening and resting grows thin until it no longer matters. Here, nothing is being evaluated, nothing is being recorded, nothing is being carried forward as memory. The night holds everything evenly, allowing you to return again and again to this unmarked space where rest arrives quietly, without effort, without measure. In this space, nothing asks to be named. There is no advantage in recognizing what is happening and no loss in letting it remain unclear. Awareness can soften without disappearing, spreading gently without needing a center. You may sense that attention no longer moves in a straight line. It does not travel from one thought to the next. It lingers, pauses, drifts, sometimes without direction, sometimes without content at all. This is not something to notice or correct. It is simply how attention behaves when measurement is absent. The night does not offer signals to follow. There are no cues that indicate progress, no markers that say you are closer or farther from rest. Time stretches and folds in on itself, becoming less distinct, less important. Moments blend together, losing their edges. The body responds to this absence of measure by settling further. Weight distributes itself more evenly. Breath continues without rhythm being tracked. Small movements happen and then stop, without being registered as movement at all. Thoughts may appear briefly, but they do not stay long enough to form a sequence. They dissolve before they can become meaningful. Without being measured, they have nothing to attach to. They pass through like soft shadows, leaving no imprint. You do not need to remain present for this to continue. Even presence can soften, becoming less defined, less involved. The night carries awareness gently, allowing it to fade and return without consequence. Here, rest is not an experience to have. It is not something you enter or leave. It is simply what remains when nothing is being counted, nothing is being tracked, nothing is being asked to make sense. As the voice continues, it can thin out even further. Words lose their boundaries. Sound becomes background. Meaning dissolves into rhythm, and rhythm dissolves into quiet, allowing you to remain in this measured, free space without effort, without attention, without measure. There is no direction you need to follow now. Nothing is pointing forward and nothing is pulling you back. The sense of moving towards something can soften, not because it was wrong, but because it is no longer necessary. Here, attention does not need a destination. It does not need to settle anywhere in particular. It can remain open, loosely present, without deciding where to rest. The night does not ask you to arrive. It allows you to remain exactly where you are without defining what that means. You may notice how often direction quietly shapes experience, a tendency to drift toward sleep or toward thought or toward awareness itself. Tonight, even that tendency can relax. There is no preferred state to move into, and no need to avoid any state that appears. If attention wanders, it does not need to return. If it pauses, it does not need to continue. If it fades, nothing is lost. The night remains steady, holding space without guiding it. Time becomes less useful here. Without direction, moments no longer line up in a sequence. They overlap, stretch, and blur together. There is no clear sense of earlier or later, only a quiet continuity that does not need to be tracked. The body responds naturally to this absence of direction. Without an end point to reach, it settles more fully. Weight distributes itself slowly, breath deepens and lightens in its own rhythm, and small adjustments happen without being noticed. Nothing is trying to get anywhere. Thoughts may still arise, but they do not carry momentum. They do not point toward action or resolution. They appear briefly, then drift away, leaving behind the same open space they entered. Without direction, they lose their urgency. You do not need to hold this openness in place. It does not collapse if you stop paying attention to it. It remains quietly present, supported by the night itself, steady and unchanging, beneath whatever passes through. Here, staying does not require effort. There is no discipline in remaining, and no mistake in drifting. Whether attention stays with the voice, moves elsewhere, or fades completely, the space remains intact. The voice can continue without leading. Words do not need to form a path. They can circle gently, touching the same quiet places again and again, without moving forward, without arriving anywhere new. In this directionless space, rest unfolds naturally, not because it is pursued, but because nothing is pushing against it. The night holds you without orientation, without expectation, allowing you to remain suspended in this gentle openness, free from movement, free from destination, free to rest without going anywhere at all. There is no need to notice how long you have been here. The sense of duration can soften, losing its edge, becoming less relevant than the quiet continuity underneath it. Whether this has lasted moments or much longer does not change anything essential. In this space, nothing is late and nothing is early. Experience does not arrive on a schedule. It unfolds gently, without reference, without expectation, allowing everything to move at its own unmarked pace. Attention may thin out even further, becoming less concerned with where it is resting. It does not need to settle on the voice, and it does not need to move away from it. It can remain loosely open, touching sound, sensation, and silence without holding on to any of them. The night does not require clarity. It does not ask you to remain aware of what is happening. Even confusion, even vagueness are welcome here. Nothing about this space depends on understanding. You may sense that there is no longer a clear boundary between staying and drifting. Both happen naturally, without effort, without choice. The idea of direction continues to fade, leaving behind a gentle neutrality that does not need to be named. Breath continues without pattern being followed. The body rests deeper into stillness, responding to gravity and warmth without instruction. Small sensations come and go, but they do not gather into a story. They pass through quietly, leaving the same openness behind. Here, there is no need to return anywhere. You have not wandered off, and you are not expected to come back. The space remains available whether attention is present or not, steady and unchanged beneath whatever passes through. As the voice continues, it can soften even more. Words stretch and thin, becoming less distinct. Meaning loosens its grip, allowing rhythm and tone to carry what remains. Nothing is moving forward. Nothing is being left behind. The night holds this stillness gently, allowing you to remain without direction, without destination, without effort, resting quietly as everything else becomes unnecessary. There can be moments when it is no longer clear where awareness is located, not moving outward, not turning inward, not focused on any single point. It spreads gently without gathering itself around a center, without choosing a place to rest. You do not need to find where you are in this experience. There is no position that needs to be confirmed. Awareness does not require a seat or a viewpoint in order to remain present. It continues quietly, even when it is not organized around a sense of here. The idea of listening can soften as well. Sound arrives, but there is no clear listener receiving it. The voice moves through the space, not toward you, not away from you, simply present, blending with the quiet of the night. There's less distinction now between what is inside and what is outside. Sensation does not need to be claimed. Thought does not need to be owned. They arise and fade without pointing back to a central place that must be maintained. Without a center, effort loses its reference point. There is no one left to relax, no one left to stay alert, no one left to manage what comes next. The body responds naturally, settling deeper into stillness as the need for coordination fades. Breath continues without belonging to anyone. It moves as part of the same rhythm as sound, as space, as silence. There is no need to follow it and no loss if it is forgotten. You may notice that awareness becomes less personal, not distant, not detached, simply less defined. It does not gather around identity or memory. It remains open, evenly touching whatever appears without preference. In this space, there is no clear boundary between resting and listening. Both happen without intention. The night carries awareness gently, without asking it to stay awake or to disappear. Thoughts may still pass through, but they do not form a narrative. They appear as soft impressions, without edges, without direction. They do not return to a center because there is no center to return to. As the voice continues, it can dissolve further into the background. Words lose their shape. Sound becomes texture. Awareness no longer needs to organize what it touches. Here, nothing is being observed from a distance. Nothing is being experienced by someone in particular. There is only this quiet openness, without center, without position, without effort. The night remains steady, holding awareness gently in this centerless space, allowing rest to deepen naturally, without needing a listener, without needing a place to land. There is no need to know where awareness begins or ends. It does not have clear edges here. It does not gather itself to check what is happening. It remains quietly open, touching experience lightly without forming a center around it. The sense of being someone who is aware can soften as well. Not disappearing, not dissolving completely, simply becoming less relevant. Awareness continues even when the idea of a self fades into the background. Nothing needs to take its place. Sound arrives without traveling toward anyone. It does not land. It does not need to be received. It passes through the space naturally, leaving no trace that requires attention. The body remains present without being organized. Sensation appears and fades without being gathered into a single location. There is no need to map what is felt. There is no advantage in knowing where sensation is strongest or weakest. Breath continues, unclaimed and untracked. It does not belong to a center. It does not return to a source. It moves as part of the same quiet field as sound and silence. Thoughts may appear briefly, but they do not circle back to anyone. They do not form a story. They do not ask to be understood. They pass through like faint echoes, without direction, without meaning. In this space, awareness does not need to stay awake. It does not need to fade. It remains present in a way that does not depend on clarity or focus. Whether attention sharpens or softens makes no difference here. The night holds this centerless awareness gently. There is no position to maintain, no perspective to protect. Everything continues evenly, without reference, without effort. As the voice continues, it can dissolve further into the background. Words thin out. Sound becomes texture. Awareness rests without gathering itself, without returning anywhere, without needing a center at all. There is no need to follow the voice any longer. It does not need to guide you, and it does not need to disappear. It can remain lightly present without asking attention to stay with it. Here, words begin to loosen their meaning. They no longer need to connect. They no longer need to form a line. They arrive softly, then pass, leaving space behind them. You do not need to listen carefully. You do not need to let go. Both listening and not listening are allowed, and neither changes what is happening now. The night continues evenly without being affected by your involvement. Awareness may thin further, becoming less concerned with sound or silence. The difference between them grows small. The voice becomes part of the background, like air or distance, present but no longer central. Thoughts may still appear, but they are quieter now. They do not ask to be followed. They do not gather into memory. They fade before they can take shape, leaving the same calm openness behind. The body rests without instruction. Breath moves without rhythm being noticed. Weight settles naturally, carried by surface and space without adjustment. Nothing needs to be checked. Here nothing is expected of you. There is no transition you need to complete, no moment you need to reach before resting fully. The night does not wait for readiness. Sound can become distant. Meaning can soften further. Even the sense of being here can fade slightly without disappearing completely. Everything becomes simpler, quieter, less defined. You may drift in and out of awareness. You may remain lightly present. Either is fine. The night holds both without distinction. As the voice continues, it can slow and thin. Words lose their weight. Pauses grow more spacious. What remains does not need to be named. There is nothing to remember from here, nothing to carry forward, nothing to understand, only this gentle continuation, already underway, already complete. The night deepens on its own. You do not need to follow it. You are already within it, resting quietly as sound softens, meaning fades, and everything unnecessary falls away. You do not need to stay with the words any longer. They have already done what they needed to do. From here, sound can remain without carrying meaning. The voice can soften further, becoming less distinct. Words slow down. Pauses stretch gently. What is heard no longer needs to be understood. There is no transition you need to notice, no moment you need to mark. The shift happens quietly on its own as attention rests and sound continues. Breath moves easily in the background. The body remains supported, steady, and unmoving. Nothing needs to change for this next layer to begin. Soon, the voice will give way to a simpler rhythm, sound without instruction, tone without direction, a steady presence that does not ask for listening or response. You do not need to follow it. You do not need to let go. You can remain exactly as you are, allowing sound to pass through or fade into the background without effort. As words fall away, only rhythm remains. As rhythm settles, even that becomes less important. The night continues to deepen, holding everything gently, without measure, without expectation. And from here, the sound can continue on its own. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward, toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all. A rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras. not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koyasan, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.
Shano Makamudara